So today I'm going to talk about Carolingian architecture. Basically, the type of architecture that developed under Charlemagne and his successors. Sounds super fancy, but um, it really was just a moment where Europe tried to kind of reboot itself culturally. This was roughly around late 700s to early 900s, and architecture really played a big role during that time. So the Carolingian dynasty shows up during a time when Europe, like I said, was pretty messy politically. When Charlemagne is crowned emperor in 800 CE, architecture starts to become one of the ways that he really wants to emphasize power and unity. It wasn't just showing that the buildings, it was also about creating stability, kind of sending a message of saying like, hey, the emperor's back, you know? And they were really into reviving and learning religion at the same time. Carolingian architects um, didn't just pull out ideas out of nowhere, so they wanted to find ways to, of course, like everything, for to where from where to get their ideas from. So they looked back at Rome and also at the Byzantine Empire to get these ideas. So from Rome, we have basilicas, big arches, big columns, very classical. And from the Byzantine, we get domes, central planned churches, and a lot of shiny, beautiful interior decorations. So the Palatine Chapel in Aachen is the best example of this. It basically borrows a ton from San Vitali in Ravenna. So some big features you'll see in Carolingian buildings are the thick stone walls that they really implemented to show mass grandeur and power. Additionally, they would also use rounded arches. So again, they really took the idea from Romans to really help create vertically and have big spaces that these arches would allow for. Um, Additionally, they would also have big chunky piers, which, like I said, from the arches really helped open up space, and while the arches helped hold up that building up vertically. Um, so that's the big entrance front with towers and upper gallery. Oh, and they also reused Roman stuff like actual columns and marbles to make everything more look more legit and connected to the past. So here's the start of the show. So the Palatine Chapel, built around 792 to 805, and it was meant to be Charlemagne's imperial chapel. It's it's octagonal, it's super tall on the inside, which I don't have any inside pictures, but from the outside you can really see that. I think on the next few slides I have it like that. I have some images, but and it's decorated with imported marble and bronze, just makes it really resemble power and money, just how much money he had. It was like a flex, like a way for Charlemagne to say, I'm the new emperor of Rome. As you guys can see, look at what I'm building. You know, it just really showed who he was coming in as a new successor. So the Westwork, this is what I find as one of the coolest Carolingian inventions. It's that big towered entrance at the front of the church. It's functional, of course, but it's also very symbolic. Um, if I remember correctly from lectures, it really emphasized and showed uh, how God connects to the sun. Of course, sun rises from the east and sets to the west. Um, and that's really what this West work really tried to emphasize was that connection to God facing west. Um, The rulers could stand above the crowd and be seen, and it gave a church a strong face. Um, the Corby Abbey Westwork is actually one of the few that still survives. It really just emphasizes how they really started to implement ways to connect and resemble God Himself. Um, so monasteries were kind of the engines of Carolingian culture. The plan of Saint Gal, even though it wasn't actually built, um, shows that shows their dream layout. Church, cloister, workshops, kitchens, dorms, everything organized. So they always had a set plan for how they had everything, how they wanted everything, how interactive everything was. Just really showed how much they cared about order and daily routine, which which really shaped monastic design for centuries to come. So, materials like construction and decoration. So, builders, like I said, we used a lot of Roman materials, which was really smart by them, of course. Um, Marble veneers, bronze doors, and decorative metalworks. Um, On the outside, things could look pretty simple, but the interiors were often very impressive. It really showed how the Carolingian world was trying to bring back craftsmanship from resources, even when the resources weren't really that great. But they brought back from ideas of the past and really wanted to connect with that, which I found very interesting and cool. So, symbolism. So, Carolingian buildings weren't just for worship, they were very much so political messages. The architecture um, kind of said, this is God's empire and Charlemagne is his guy. Even where Charlemagne sat, which is right on the chair right there, it's the Ashen Throne, and it was a place to show power, not just religiously, but imperially. The scale and height of buildings helped create that sense of authority. So now I wanted to get into the Carolingian decline. So by the end of that period, things really started to fall apart a little bit. After Charlemagne, the empire got divided amongst its heirs, and that political unity that helped like fuel the architectural boom kind of disappears. So you start to see less large-scale buildings because resources and stability just aren't the same anymore. But even though the era declined pretty quickly, the architecture itself still shows how powerful the movement was. Like my slide says, Carolingian architecture wasn't just copying Rome. It reinvented classical and Christian ideas into something new. Buildings like the Palatine Chapel, I would say, still super important because they shows the fusion of art, faith, and imperial ambition, even as the dynasty itself faded. So now we're kind of moving forward into what becomes the Romanesque era, and this slide really shows the transition from a Carolingian to Romanesque. If you look at the diagram, you can see how the churches start to developing into more complex forms. So, like the apses, they start multiplying into that more kind of sort of stepped echelon pattern. And then you see the ambulatories getting more defined. So it's almost like they're experimenting with circulation. They're trying to guide people around the space in a more intentional way. So even though Carolingian architecture fades out politically, the ideas are very still strongly there. So especially symmetry, order, and clear structural rhythm throughout keeps growing, and it ultimately ends up shaping the early Romanesque style pretty directly. Even the study edited by Carol Oltenheim on the Romanesque Renaissance really showed how Carolingian, Byzantine, and late Roman architecture inspired later early modern revival of antique styles. And here are my references for my information and images. Thank you very much.